I've told you about Ukraine and that there was a peace agreement in 2014, and it was called the Minsk Accords. And so what that was supposed to do was avoid a war between Russia and Ukraine. And what was the war over? So the people, the Russia-speaking separatists in the Donbass didn't want to go along with the coup of Ukraine. So a bunch of right-wingers overthrew the government with the help of the United States and the CIA in 2014, overthrew the government. And the people in the Donbass didn't want to go along with it. The Russian-speaking people in the eastern part of Ukraine didn't want to go along with this coup. And so there was fighting. And so we had the Minsk agreement, and that was supposed to give autonomy to the people in the Donbass. And then they were supposed to be able to have their own local elections. And the Ukraine government was going to stop bombing them. Well, they never abided by it. The Ukraine government never stopped bombing them, never gave them autonomy. And the Minsk agreement, now we're finding out from Angela Merkel, that was just to buy Ukraine time so they could build up their military for this war that they knew they were provoking. That's what the story is. That's the actual story. So, former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, in an interview with the German newspaper Die Welt, the 2014 Minsk agreement was an attempt to give Ukraine time. They used that time to get stronger, which you can see today. Ukraine of 2014-15 is not the Ukraine of today. Like us at the If We Could See fighting near Debaltseve in 2015, Russia could easily have won. And I very much doubt that NATO countries could have done as much for Ukraine then as they are doing now. We all know that. That the conflict was frozen, that the problem was not resolved, but that it is exactly what brought Ukraine valuable time. Can anyone tell me how can Russia ever trust the West again? How can they ever commit to a possible future peace agreement? I would say they can't. So Russia entered into those negotiations, the Minsk Accords, in good faith. And countries like France and Germany guaranteed that the Minsk Accords would be implemented. Here's Max Blumenthal says, Angela Merkel reveals the Minsk agreement was a stalling tactic that allowed the West to militarize Ukraine as an anti-Russian proxy and fortify it for an inevitable war. I'm struggling to find any coverage or analysis of this remarkable confession in English language mainstream media. You will not. This will be it. So there you go. They weren't. So now why would Russia ever negotiate with Ukraine or NATO in good faith? Because Ukraine wasn't. Nobody was in the West negotiating with good faith. And so they provoked this war. Who wanted this war? Russia didn't want this war. You know who did? The United States and NATO. They wanted this war. And so we got a war. The Ukraine people don't want this war. Zelensky doesn't want this war. He's doing it because he knows if he doesn't, he'll get killed by the right-wing Azov battalion, the Nazis in Ukraine, or he'll get disappeared by NATO. I mean, look what we did to Saddam Hussein after we were done with the Saddam Hussein. We hanged him.
You know,
that's what we do. Look what we did with Gaddafi when we were done with Gaddafi. We killed him, and we overthrew his country. And so that's exactly what we would do to Zelensky, which is why he's going along. Well, again, it's not like they ever really wanted peace. They didn't want peace in Ukraine. They didn't want peace in Iraq. They didn't want peace in Libya. They wanted a war, and they wanted to overthrow a government. And that's exactly what NATO and Joe Biden and the United States wanted in Ukraine, except it's not going that way for them. It's a lot harder than they thought.